Hey everybody, Papa Wiggs here with Wiggs. We're going to talk about our week one sleepers for the Sunday, Monday games coming up here. And Wiggs, I'll kick it off. My first sleeper pick is Mike Kaczynski from the Bengals. Listen, they're playing the Patriots this week. T. Higgins is out or is doubtful right now. Jamar Chase, who knows? He says he's a game time decision. Uh, because they still haven't resolved his contract thing, so he may or may not be playing. And even if he does play, how effective is he? Gonna be? I don't know. Is he even in shape? He hasn't been practicing. Even though the Patriots team isn't that going to be that great this year. At least I don't think they are. Their defense is still going to probably be tough. Uh, so, um, I'm going with Kaczynski because I think Burrow's going to need to throw to somebody. Kaczynski's, going to be, I think, one of his primary targets for this game. So I could see him having a decent game, at least, 6 to 8 receptions, maybe 80 to 100 yards. Obviously that can change, but that's just my prediction on that one. My next sleeper is Adonai Mitchell. I think it's Adonai Mitchell from the Colts. So the Colts, they're playing the Texans. It's, obviously that's going to be a tough game. They are at home. But Josh Downs has been downgraded to out. So I think that to me that means that Mitchell's going to be heavily involved in the offense. Along with Pittman. So I think that Mitchell definitely could be a sleeper here because Pittman is going to be most likely double teamed. So I could definitely see, again, I could see Mitchell, going for, at least, 6 to 8 receptions, maybe around 90 yards, possibly a touchdown. So that's why I'm picking him. Plus, I think the Colts and the Texans game is going to be a back and forth matchup. So I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of throwing in this game. So that's why I'm going with Mitchell. My next guy, this one might be a little bit of a surprise. I know it was for Wiggs. Demarcus Robinson for the Rams. I know some of you might be saying, "You, Demarcus Robinson, Bob, really?" But here, let me just justify my sleeper here. The Rams are going to be at Detroit on the road. This is going to be obviously Stafford's going to be back. Where he started his career and everything. Detroit's got a pretty tough defense. They're going to be paying a lot of attention to Puka. I'm not convinced that Cooper Kupp is, going to be able to, carry the load. So Stafford's going to have to, he's going to have to get the ball to some other resources. And Robinson has looked good throughout training camp. He's actually, pushed at, I think it's Atwell out of the number three spot from everything that I'm hearing and seeing and stuff. So I think Robinson is another sleeper. I don't necessarily think he's going to go off. In the sense of like Mitchell or something, but I do think that he could still, have an effective game. Like 6 receptions, possibly 80 yards, unless of course Stafford finds him deep because Robinson, can break it off. So there's the potential it could be more. But I still think that 6 receptions around 80 yards. I mean, you're still looking at 14 points. So so yeah. So there's my number 3 sleeper. My 4th sleeper is Ray Davis from Buffalo. Buffalo's in playing against the Cardinals at home. hey, listen, James Cook is going to be the guy in the backfield. I get it. But the Cardinals are going to be tough. Uh, all these teams are using two running backs. You know, at some point, I think Davis is going to be active in the offense, even at the backup. So I could actually see him having a combined receiving rushing game of around 60 to 80 yards. And I heard that he could be very active in the red zone. So I'm actually thinking that he's got the potential of maybe popping off for a touchdown as well. So that's why I'm choosing Davis. And then my last sleeper this week is Will Levis from the Titans. Tennessee is going to be going up against the Bears in Chicago. I think Levy's proved last year that he's definitely a solid, QB. I think that this could definitely be, his breakout year. I think this team in general, and I think Wiggs would agree with me, especially this offense is really is flying under the radar. I think a lot of people aren't giving them their um, props, and so I think that Levy's has a good shot of picking apart that Bears defense on the road and surprising them. Um, I don't know that they'll necessarily win. I think it's going to be a close game, but I definitely think that Levy's is going to be he's going to be slinging the ball all over. I think he could go. I think he could have anywhere from 250 to 300 yards and possibly 1 to 2 touchdowns. So I think that he could have a solid game here. So Wiggs, you want to talk about yours?
I will say of all of your five, I do like the Will Levis pick the most. I think that offense is going to be nuts this year. I don't know if they'll necessarily close out games, but I think they're going to be scoring a lot of points. But yeah, heading into mine, I went apparently an all receiver route. I didn't even notice it until I looked at this after. But to start it off, Demario Douglas, the Patriots. I think this receiver here on the roster is going to separate himself a little bit from the pack. Last year as a rookie, he played pretty well until he got hurt, and I was actually quite impressed. He had no touchdowns, but at least when I had him on my fantasy team, back to back weeks, he caught the ball like 7 or 8 times for 80 yards and put up 14 to 16 points. It was like nuts, and I think he will have a pretty solid role here in this offense. And who's their starting quarterback right now? It's Brissett.
Yeah.
Brissett. Okay. I didn't want to butcher that there, but I think Brissett is pretty solid at finding the receivers he needs to find. I thought he did a great job last year in Cleveland, finding Amari Cooper. I think he could do the same thing here with Demario Douglas. I don't know if anyone else really is going to be spectacular in this offense. I mean, Douglas might not even be that great this week, but I don't know. That receiving core is hard to judge, but I do think he can separate himself from those others and have a pretty decent game. Moving on from there, my guy Darnell Mooney. I've been hyping him up all off season. I know my dad's getting annoyed with it, but I think this is truly someone who could easily have over 1,000 yards this year, as well as two other guys on this roster. And I truly think he could come out this week and have about 80 yards on 6 receptions and a touchdown. He's got Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, and as we saw last year, it's not just one guy in the offense he throws the ball to. We saw it between 3 different guys there until a few guys got hurt. But Cousins found not only Justin Jefferson a lot of times, he found Jordan Addison, and then he found TJ Hawkins, and I could see this being the same thing as last year here in this Atlanta offense. On top of it, they had a good running back, which honestly, Kirk Cousins made a parallel move to a team. He literally has about the same amount of talent as he did on the Vikings, and I could totally see Mooney having a great year. Moving on from that, I got Jerry Jeudy here from the Browns. I think this is just a player that's going to be slept on quite a bit this year. I know he hasn't performed that great in Denver, but I think that just came down to poor quarterback play in most of those years. And heading into week one, I actually think he's probably the most slept on player. There might be some people are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to start him on my flex as Jerry Jeudy, but let's be realistic. About 90% of the community is sleeping on Jerry Judy, and I think he actually could have a really good week here. Um, and I think you and I were talking about this in a different video. I think he could really be the wide receiver in this offense. I think he might surpass Amari Cooper at some point.
I think it all depends on his health, but
Yeah.
he's got a tough. They got a tough matchup, so we'll see.
Then moving on from there, I got Noah Brown. This is just another receiver I feel like being slept on at the moment. I know he just got traded to the Commanders, but I actually think he's going to end up being their wide receiver too. Now, maybe he doesn't have the greatest week one performance. I still could see him having a really good performance because he's one of those receivers where he can get by a cornerback and he's wide open for a 60-yard touchdown. So even if it's just one or two catches and he pops one off, I mean, that's a lot of points right there. I think he'll be a pretty solid weapon there for Jaden Daniels. I think he will pass Luke McCaffrey on that depth chart and end up being that wide receiver too, behind McLaurin. And then I think McCaffrey will kind of just be underneath them. And then Jamison Williams, this is someone who I think hasn't really shown his talent yet in the league. I know he's been dealing with injuries and then a suspension, but I think this is truly a year he could have a pretty solid season, and I honestly could see it happening here in this first week. A lot of the focus is going to be on St. Brown and Laporta here from the LA defense, so I could see Jamison Williams finding holes in the defense or even popping it off downfield again. He's kind of like Noah Brown. He gets downfield and by defenders, he's wide open for a touchdown. So, I mean, honestly, we could say that about any of these receivers here, but I truly think Jamison Williams will have a pretty solid week one and a pretty solid year overall.
Yeah, he's probably out of yours. He's probably the best sleeper. You know, that you picked there that I agree with. I mean, I think these other guys that you talked about definitely have the potential to pop it off too. So I just think I agree with you with Williams. I think that he's going to have a breakout year. And we've talked about him before. So yeah, I definitely see why you pick him as a sleeper here. So it's definitely going to be an interesting first week of football. So we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out. But yeah, Wiggs, you got anything else to add or? All right. Well, hey everybody, remember Fantasy Fools PPR on YouTube. We're also out on Snapchat, X, TikTok, Instagram. Share, like, subscribe. We appreciate all your guys' views and any feedback that you have, and hopefully you're finding this as another resource and beneficial to when you go in and set your fantasy lineups. So with that, we'll see you next time.